Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 9th Pydata meetup. So before we get to introducing our speaker for today, I'll briefly let's recite the short version of the Pydata Code of Conduct. So be kind to others, don't insult or put down others, behave professionally. Remember that harassment and sexist, racist, or exclusionary jokes and language are not appropriate for Pydata. All communication should be appropriate for a professional audience, including people of many different backgrounds. Sexual language and imagery is not appropriate. Pydata is dedicated to providing a harassment-free event experience for everyone, regardless of gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. We do not tolerate harassment of participants in any form. Thank you for helping us make this a welcoming, friendly community for all. So now I'll hand you over to Jade, who will present today.
All right, thank you, Shiva. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jade Chattergoon, and I work as a strategic analyst at TSTT. So welcome to PyDataTT's 9th talk. I'll share my screen now. Okay, so today we are going to cover some EDA basics, so exploratory data analysis basics, and we're going to learn how to use one of the most popular data visualization tools called Tableau. So I only started using Tableau a few months ago, but it has definitely made my work life easier in many ways. So for today's talk, I'll start with a convincing case on why you should care about EDA and Tableau. We'll go through a detailed look into Tableau, finish off with a simple dashboard, and then a tiny introduction on a helpful library called TabPy at the end for the more experienced Python coders. So what is exploratory data analysis, right? Human beings are easily deemed the most intelligent species on Earth. Can we agree on that? Well, why are they deemed the most intelligent? Because whether we realize it or not, there are many thought processes which support every single decision we make. So like a computer, our minds process a large amount of information before we make a decision. It can range from deciding not to walk into a puddle, or something worse for that matter, or choosing to wear something for an occasion, or deciding where to purchase certain items or what items to purchase. Our brains have evolved and adapted for survival, and we've gotten a lot smarter. We've gotten a lot better at making more and more complex decisions. So these thought processes that support these decisions, they constitute a very fundamental form of data analysis. So when it comes to data that we can't really internalize, memorize, and process, we perform exploratory data analysis, shortened as EDA, to perform those important or to support those important decisions. So basically, exploratory data analysis is a critical process which allows us to investigate trends, relationships, and behaviors in a selected data set or data sets, which allows us to understand how best to solve a problem, answer a question, in order to finally make a decision. So why is EDA important? Well, that's like asking, why is it important to use a map when driving around in a foreign country? I know it's a wild analogy, but we'll go with it. So EDA drives the decision-making process. EDA gives us the insight that we need to choose the right approach and the right methodology in order to achieve the most optimal end result. So let's go back to the map analogy, right? A map contains a large amount of information. It can take the reader a few minutes to absorb the information presented, especially when he or she is in a foreign country. So I think the most important step when reading a map is to know where you are. So where the starting point is, what's your reference point? Otherwise, how would you know where to go? So similar, EDA allows us to understand where our starting point is. With any workflow, data is processed in some way to produce meaningful output. Understanding our data in the initial stages can help us to clear up or strengthen our assumptions about the data. It could tell us how different factors affect variables in the data. It can help us to form reliable conclusions based on relationships uncovered in trends and patterns. And it can help us to discover anomalies, nulls, duplication, and we can filter them out as needed to keep only those core components that we're interested in. So EDA is essential because it gets us the most out of our data. So who uses EDA? EDA is used by data scientists, analysts, researchers, and statisticians to help companies, businesses, and even governments to make informed and data-driven decisions. It can be used in report building, building statistical models, or even machine learning models. So what is Tableau? Tableau is a visual analytics platform which facilitates exploratory data analysis. It's widely used by businesses, students, executives, etc. So Tableau has two versions. There's Tableau Public. This is the free version. And then there's Tableau Desktop. This is the paid version, which was built for bigger data and bigger projects. So Tableau's user interface is clean and it's simple. It allows the user to load in their data sets, manipulate their data, make comparisons and visualize their results, build reports and dashboards, and present all their results in one place. So Tableau includes the many perks of both Python and SQL, and it's easy as drag in, drop in, and click in. It facilitates simple graphs and charts, but Tableau Professional can also perform complex calculations using built-in and ready-to-use functions. When you become familiar with this platform, those reports and dashboards can be built within a few minutes once you have a plan. So why am I introducing you to Tableau? Well, the world is rapidly heading in the direction of data-driven methodologies, and the need for persons with data-oriented skill sets is growing just as fast. One can even say the relationship between the two is directly proportional. Tableau is perfect for anyone who's looking for a simple way to explore data, whether it's for school or work or even for your business. It's also perfect for you as a professional, whatever field you're in, to possibly advance in the workplace or make your life a bit easier, improve the decision-making process, or even as a recent graduate, if you haven't started working yet and you want to get into the analytics space, Tableau is good for you. And now that I have stressed on the importance of exploratory data analysis, you can deduce for yourself why learning to use Tableau is an important skill. One of the best things about Tableau is that there's a huge community of users and great documentation and examples all over the internet, which can help you to troubleshoot all the issues, well, almost all at least, and use Tableau to its fullest potential. So before we get our feet wet with the actual tool, I'd like to feature a few dashboards found on Tableau Public's gallery, where creative users of Tableau Public from all over the world are featured as viz of the day. So here we'll get a sample of what you could create with Tableau. So the first one here is called India's Global Entrepreneurship Monitor Report. And it's a fairly simple report. There are two main sections here. We have an introductory statement followed by some light statistics, which tell us a bit more about why Indian entrepreneurs choose this route. And then the second section begins with a bold header, followed by some simple graphics and representing statistics as well, which are listed out here. And thus they represent the entrepreneurial framework conditions in an eye-catching way. On the right-hand side here, we also can see Tableau features the name of the report and the creator's name, some supporting information, and the date it was featured on. Now, this one here is an eyeful. This is a real-world fake data human resources dashboard. At the very top, we can see that all locations and all years are selected. So this means that the user is able to interact with the dashboard by selecting from a locations parameter and a years parameter somewhere. We can also see some total counts and some average calculations. We can see several bar graphs. They also are broken down by different categories like departments, states, and age. some of them are interactive and will allow you to drill into more details. There's also a trend graph here and a donut chart and a spectacular bar chart over here, which shows the diversity by both race and gender. I think this is a well-deserved visit of the day feature. Then next off, we have a different style, not as many components, but still very interesting. This is Get to Know Team USA, and it analyzes data on Team USA's Paralympic athletes in the Olympics. So there are 3 sections in this one. The first 2 feature non-traditional forms of data visualization, right? So the first is a bubble chart, where the size of the bubble is an indicator of some numerical value tied to that variable. So we have the bubbles representing type of sport it looks like, and then the size of the bubble may be the number of competitors from Team USA who participated in that sport. The bubble chart, it seems to be interactive here. So if you click on one of the bubbles in the actual dashboard, it should filter the data in the other 2 sections by sport. So then we have the home state section, which also features bubbles, but superimposed on a map. Tableau can do some pretty amazing things with map coordinates, which we'll see in the next slide. But in the last section here, we have some traditional bar graphs to end it off. The age and gender bar graph is displayed on one pair of axes here, and I personally really like this representation. So the last one I want to feature is the London bike collisions from 2005 to 2019. Very straightforward. The data would have contained geospatial data, some coordinates of longitude and latitude, which Tableau uses to create a geospatial map within minutes. And this one, I think, is also interactive with some hover data and filters as well. So now that I've gotten everyone excited and raring to go, I'll briefly describe the download and installation process so that you can follow along if you like, play around with the tool and create something of your own. And when the talk is over, I'd like to see what you will come up with. The download link and the link to the dataset can be found on our Facebook page. You just go on the PyData's 9th talk, and in the comment section of this event, you'll see both links, right? So make sure that you follow us on all our social media. That is PyDataTT on Facebook, Meetup, and YouTube. So when you are downloading and installing Tableau, you'll go to this link on your bottom right-hand side of the screen here. That's the same one that's featured in the comment section of our post on Facebook. And you can also just Google download Tableau Public and click on the results shown in purple here on the left slide, the left part of the slide. Either of these will take you to the same location, which is presented here, right? So you type in your email address, you click download the app, and this will trigger an automatic download of an executable file. And when that's done, you can just click on it, execute it, accept Tableau Public's terms and conditions, and then let it make changes to the computer, and then click install. So once that's done, you should see Tableau Public screen open up. So I will now just navigate to Tableau Public, and can anybody just confirm that you're seeing the Tableau Public screen here?
Yes, Jade, you're seeing it.
All right, nice. Thank you. So I'd now like to direct your attention to the blue panel on the left side of the screen. For every new project, this is the first panel you'll interact with. It's where you connect to your data set. So for Tableau Public, the free version, there's a limited set of data connections you could use. The most common ones are Microsoft Excel and text file, Google Sheets. You can find public datasets online in these formats, so they should be fairly simple to download and connect to from this panel. I must warn you, though, that you should not be using any confidential data for Tableau Public. because your creation will not or cannot be stored or saved locally. It must be published to Tableau Public online. The professional version, however, has more than 50 types of data connections and facilitates local storage. So let's click on Google Sheets for our tutorial today. All right. Nice. So then you should see in your browser a new tab. You want to choose your Google account that contains the Google Sheets. So for those who are using the data set in the comment section of the Facebook post, you can just use the shared link to open the Google Sheets. And once it's open there, you should be able to access it in the same way through Tableau. So you want to allow Tableau Desktop to access your Google account. And then you can close this off. Go back to Tableau, right? Nice. So you'll get a list of all your Google Sheets, and mine is EDA with Tableau. So I'm going to click Connect. Nice. Now we're on what we call the data source page. You'll see the name of the file that you connected to right here under Connections. And the first thing we want to do is to drag in one of these sheets in your Google Sheets, right? So similar to Excel, how we have multiple sheets you can create within a file, you can also do the same thing in Google Sheets, and they are listed out here. So I'm just going to drag the vaccinations table out here and drop it. Nice. So underneath this, you'll see a preview of the data with their respective field names or column names if you prefer. You'll notice that at the top of each field name, you'll see the name of the sheet, which is vaccinations in this case. This is because you could drag and drop different sheets and maybe different data sources from this page to join with your current data source and create a relationship between the sources. So the relationships are actually different from joins, right? So that's just something to keep in mind. And when you join the two or create some relationship, you can see the resulting data set down here. And you'll know which sheet that each column is being pulled from because of that label. Then you can also see little icons here, right? Tableau is very intelligent. And when I say this, I mean that each field will have the icon associated with them based on what Tableau recognizes as the data type, right, for that field. So Tableau's website has a complete listing of visual cues and icons, which can help you to really understand what each of these mean. And that is posted in the useful links section at the end of the bibliography in this presentation, right? So most of them are pretty intuitive by design. For example, the calendars are date values. The calendars with a little clock are for datetime values. We have ABC for string or text values, and T/F for Boolean values, true or false, right? So that's the usual stuff. And there are others where it may not be as intuitive, but you could explore more on that on the website, right? In that link. So the work to be done on this page only gets more complicated than this when you're trying to join two data sets, as I mentioned. But on the professional version of Tableau, it can get really complex. You could connect to tables from databases and servers, and even use custom SQL queries on those tables. And when you're working with massive tables, those queries come in really handy because they help you to extract exactly what you need and create a nice, clean virtual table for you to work with. It also helps everything to run so much more efficiently. So we can do a simple join from the two sheets within the Google Sheet, which I'll demonstrate now. So the other sheet that we have here is locations. So I'm just going to drag it, and you'll see a little tether between the two. You can drop it, and it will prompt you to edit a relationship, right? So you want to select a field from both sheets which are the same or contain the same information, right? So I know in this data set, there's a location field, which is supposed to match up for both. So I'm going to click location is equal to location from the different data sets. And then you can see the little exclamation marks are gone and everything has basically joined up pretty smoothly, right? So that's it for the data source page for now. Before we move on to sheet one, we have data source filters, which can be added here, where you can select any field from your data set and perform a filter from here so that when you're loading fields in your or data in your sheets, it isn't very time consuming or inefficient. So that's another helpful thing that I tend to use a lot with really large tables at work, right? So we'll go to sheet one here, right? I'm gonna name it one time so I can right click here and click rename, and I'm gonna call it orientation. Right, and we'll just go through the parts of the sheet, right? So I kind of wanna move this out from here. All right, so let's start from the top. We have Tableau Public and the name of your workbook, which is just book one because we haven't named it as yet. Then we have file. So file has new file, open file. You can open it from Tableau Public Server. You can close it. Data, you can add a new data source right from here, or you can go to the data source page and do that. You can even paste a data source, and this tick mark here indicates that this is the data source that we're currently connected to. Then you can go across here, edit your data source, which will just take you back to the data source page. Refresh your data source. So let's say you want to make a change in Google Sheets itself. You can go to your Google Sheets, make a change, and then reflect that change in Tableau by clicking this refresh button here. You can also view the data, and we have some nice little helpful options here. I mean, I don't commonly use them, but some of them are really helpful. Example, export data to CSV, right? So worksheet, you can create a new worksheet from here, or you can go to the bottom, where is it, here, to create a new worksheet. We have actions, which I will demonstrate later on. Tooltip, some parts of the worksheet, and auto updates. Auto updates is really nice. So if you notice, every single action I perform in Tableau, you have to wait a little while for it to process. So if you're really experienced and you know exactly what sequence of processes you have to complete in order to obtain a certain visualization, you can actually pause the updates, which the loading sequences, and then do what you have to do and then resume it afterwards. Resume your auto updates afterwards, and then it just takes all of those actions and kind of just loads them in one run, right? Then we have dashboard, new dashboard, which can also be done down here. Stories seem to be very cool for presentation purposes, but I haven't personally used them as yet. Analysis have some useful stuff. I usually use totals a lot to get some subtotals or grand totals for rows or columns when we're doing big tables. You can create a calculated field from here, and you can also do that from right here, right? There are lots of little detailed buttons that you have to keep an eye out for. And at first, it can be a bit I don't know, intimidating, but you should be able to get used to it pretty quickly because I think most of it's intuitive. Haven't really used map. Format allows you to format things down to a really granular level, so it's really nice. And then presentation mode is like what I'm using right now. It allows you to present as it opens up the view for your dashboards and so on. So it's really nice. You could go to help and about Tableau public in order to see the version of Tableau that you're working with. Nice. So then we have the data pane. On the left-hand side here, we can see that we're on the data pane, and we can see the data source again that we're connected to. Now the main part we'll be working with are the fields. These field names represent all the data in the respective column in your data set, so it is way more powerful than it looks. Somebody is unmuted. Can you please just check if you're unmuted and please mute? Thank you. Right, so the main part would be the field names, and they also have these little icons that I was speaking about earlier. And I don't know if you can tell right now, because I do have flux which changes the brightness of my screen. So it might be a little yellow. Some of them are blue and some of them are green. And this is a very important distinction to make in Tableau, right? So the green ones are called measures and the blue ones are called dimensions. The measures are quantitative in nature, and Tableau has a special way of treating with those measures. So if I just drag one, you'll see that it automatically aggregates it. So for example, let me drag the daily vaccinations, I think per million, into the text shelf here. You'll see that it says sum in front of it as if a sum function is being performed on it. So it automatically does that. And the whole thing is green because it's a measure, right? And then we get a figure here. So you can also change how it's aggregated by clicking on the little arrow or right clicking and then go to measure sum, and you get a lot of nice aggregations that you can use here as well without having to do much really. It's pretty simple. Right, so the blue icons are called dimensions and they are qualitative. So this means that they're categorical variables. Dimensions behave differently and they can't be aggregated. So we really have to understand what the columns represent in the context of our data set and decide how we want to treat them. We want to treat them as a dimension or a measure, because sometimes Tableau can get it wrong. So if you see that Tableau recognize something as a dimension, you want it as a measure, you can actually convert it. So all it really takes is a right click and you can convert to dimension if it's a measure. And if you click on a dimension, you'll see convert to measure here, right? And if you need it as a dimension for one set of analysis and a measure for another, you can right click any one of them as well, hit duplicate, and you'll see, let me widen it here, you'll see that it created a copy of it. Then you can go ahead and convert the copy to your dimension, right? Then it will say in blue, it separates it here into these two sections, and you can use it however you need to use it. You can also rename it as well, wherever you need it as a dimension now in your analysis. Right, so now we can go to the filters card, which is right here. And I think this is pretty self-explanatory. It allows you to filter results by a field in the data set. Additionally, you can right click on the field that you filtered and select show filter so that the user can easily change filters while they're viewing it without having to go back to the worksheet view. So if I just want to filter by location and I click 1 or 2, right, then we can see, okay, it filters it. So it filters my daily vaccinations figure here by those 2 locations I selected, and I can show the filter on the side here. So now if I want to change that at any point in the dashboard, you can see that the numbers are like automatically just changing based on the locations that I use, right? So that's pretty nice, pretty simple. That's your filters card there, right? If the field is a measure, so if it's the green one, then we expect it to be a number, right? So dragging the field into the filter card will trigger a pop-up box, which allows you to enter a if you want it to be a sum, aggregated as a sum, or a count, or maybe a minimum or maximum value. So it's a bit different from location filter, which is a dimension that we saw with the checklist. So with all dimensions, you'll see that similar checklist that allows you to filter out null values, for example, really easily, right? And if there's an incredibly long list of items you like to filter by, you can just do that by copying and pasting the list of them using this option right here, custom value list. For example, if you're in Excel and you have a bunch of your values you want to filter by, you could copy and paste an entire list and it will be added down here. And then you can just click OK. And that would be the end of that. Nice. So then we have the marks card. Each one of these tabs in the marks card here allows you to display data in a different format. And again, fields will be dragged over the tab, will trigger some visual result in the main view area there. Then we have columns and rows, right? They really help to define the view. If a field is dragged into columns, then basically each item in that field will become a column. So for example, let me use date, right? I'm just gonna click on MY of date, which represents month year of date, and it extracts the month and the year, right? It breaks down my value here into the month and the year, and those items have become columns essentially in my data, right? To drag that out there now. Nice. So when you do this, you basically create a skeleton for your view if you don't have anything in the text shelf, right? The same thing applies for rows. If you want each item in the field to become a row in your data set, so let's say vaccines, you can drag it into rows, and well, we are filtering by location here. So this will tell you the vaccines that are applicable to these locations as rows in your table. Nice. So now we know what happens with rows, columns, or marks, or filters, and or fields. But let me go a little deeper into what we have here, right? Marks is really where we have the main body of the view, as I mentioned. If you drag a measure over to the text shelf, you get those values in tabular form. There's a little list that comes up here when you drag something over a tab, so you can actually keep track of what is there. And you'll notice the icon. Here's a little T that is the same for the text shelf, so that you know what you dragged it over, or where you dropped it over, sorry. So if you want another measure to be shown in text, so for example, people fully vaccinated, you can't just drop that into text, unfortunately. You actually have to drag it here until you see that'll show me icon, and then you drop it. And then only then you'll be able to have more than one field in your text component of the shelf, right? So you can see that there. If I were to take that out and just drag it into text, you'll see that it blended into one, and it doesn't really show me what is what. I actually am not sure what what these numbers represent with respect to these fields here, right? So I'm just gonna drag it out. So you saw the difference there. Now show me, which is a little icon on the top right hand side here. This will highlight a lot of different ways that you can visualize your data. And Tableau is really sensitive where dragging it and dropping it in a specific place, fields that is in a specific place, will give you different types of visualization. So as I was showing you before with the text, it gives you a tabular format. So that's text alone, but different combinations of fields dropped into these different tabs and rows and columns can give you a whole bunch of different types of data visualization. And we have nice little hint box here that tells you, okay, if you want to create this view, you're going to have this amount of measures, this amount of dimensions, right? So it's a nice little guide. And the ones that are, so I don't know if you can see, but some of them are like grayed out and some of them are vibrant. These vibrant ones are the ones that you can just, it kind of guesses what you want to show, and it rearranges what you have on your field, on your main view right now to fit a different kind of view. So I just clicked the box and whisker plot here, and it automatically took those same 3 field values and it created a box plot for me just by changing the location that it's dropped on the main view. Right, so then we move on to calculated fields and parameters. So again, this little triangle here, you can click on create calculated field, or you can also right click on one of your fields and go to create calculated field, which it will automatically populate the calculation with the field name, right? So calculated fields allow us to go the extra mile with our data. We can create conditional statements and create new fields from existing ones and perform conversions and extract all kinds of information from here. And as the name suggests, the output of that calculated field is also a field which can be used in our visualization. It goes back right over there. So we see we didn't name it, so it's calculation 1. And existing fields, as you saw before, they come up in an orange yellow color. The parameters actually come up in a purple color. So once you've created your field, you see that it's not hard to find because they highlight it on the left-hand side here and you can use it immediately, right? So now onto parameters, you can do it in the same way. You can either click here and create parameter, or you can right click, create parameter here. And that's really your user input. So the difference between filters and parameters, I think, is if you want to manipulate your view based on what exists in your data set, for example, locations, you can put it in filters and make it an interactive filter. But in terms of parameters, if you want to use user input in a calculation that doesn't already exist in your data set, then you can create a parameter for that. So the pop-up box, you name your parameter, you see the data type, you select which one you want, you put the value that you want to be as your current value, which is the value you'll see whenever you open up the notebook. And then, I mean, that's basically it, right? So you click OK, it goes to a parameter section, which wasn't visible previously. And you can right click on that and click show parameter to also have it visible here, right? Nice. And then you can see I can edit this value to whatever I want, but it will only affect your view if you create a calculated field and you reference that parameter in there. So create calculated field and typing in parameter 1, it comes up automatically and it comes up as purple, right? Cool. So then just remember that the difference between the parameters and the calculated and the fields in your calculated fields would be the color. So remember, purple is for parameter and orange is for the existing field names. I think that is it for the orientation of this page, really. So I'm just going to create a new sheet and we'll do a dashboard. So a friend told me that, well, he taught me that a visualization in a worksheet must answer a question. So when you pull all your worksheets together at the end of your dashboard, your result will be quite insightful and, useful. So even though it is called exploration, it is a method to the madness. So we'll proceed to create a worksheet for each question. So first question, what is the total number of daily vaccinations for each vaccine for selected locations? Kind of complicated question, but we'll see how simple it is. So best practice is to work with your filters first so that you don't have a lot of, or like a lot of rows or data to be loaded here, because it can take a while depending on the size of your data set. So I want to filter location here, right? And I'm just going to click any for now because I want to make this an interactive filter, which I'm not sure is an official name, but we'll go with that for now. And I have it shown here. Then I want to drag vaccines into rows, right? So that's helping create this skeleton of my view. And then in order to fill this ABC here, which is just the main body of our table, I will take daily vaccinations per million and drag it into my text shelf as we saw before. And then if there are any null values like we're seeing here, I can always either right click and exclude it, or I can drag vaccines into filters and exclude that. So it's easy to see how we can exclude it here. I just want to show you the difference for when you're dragging vaccines here. So we see a null. This is just based on what we have selected here and not all of the vaccines in the data set. So I'm just going to deselect these, keep null, and then exclude it. So since I ticked exclude, you'll see a strike through here. Nice. So now it will filter out the null values in the data set where all the vaccines are. And that can take a line of code with when you're programming. So, I mean, I think this is a lot easier and nicer for persons who don't know how to code. It achieves the same thing, right? So then I think that's it for this one for now. We just click a few more locations just to fill it up, look nice a little bit. And then I want to name this here. So I'm going to call that daily vaccinations. And you'll realize that actually doing the work to create the dashboard is a lot shorter than the orientation sheet itself, right? So we're done with that one already. So the next question I want to answer is, what is the trend of fully vaccinated persons for the year of 2021? So again, we filter first. So I want to filter the date field. Where is it? Over here. And I want to basically get only this year, but I also know in my trend figure, I want to show it by month year. So I'm gonna click month year and then go next. And then I'm seeing here we only have 2020, December of 2020, and I have January to August 2021. So that's an easy exclude. And then I have my filter there. So then when you are working with dates, if you want to specify what you are extracting from the date, so example month year here, you have to use your right mouse button, right click and drag to either rows or columns. Only then it will pop up this field. Otherwise, if you don't right click and you left click, it'll automatically aggregate as year, right? So I'm just gonna click month year here, and then we have our month years for January to August 2021. And then we see that we have no December. So we're kind of good for this year's data here, right? So for rows, we want to put in the people who are fully vaccinated. You can choose the per 100 one here. And I want to just drop that right here. It's a measure, so it automatically aggregates the sum. And as easy as 3 fields, again, you can see that it's just as simple as dragging and dropping, and you get the trend graph there. So I'm just going to name this fully vaccinated. A trend, right? Cool. Next sheet. So who are the most vaccinated and least vaccinated countries in the Caribbean? I think this might actually be the most complicated one we'll do. So since we want Caribbean, and if you notice the location has way more than just the Caribbean, we want to create what's called a group from the location field here. So I'm just going to create on the calculated field, you see group, and then I want to start to make a group, right? So I'm going to call this CBN just for Caribbean. And I want to start creating, adding stuff to my group. So I'm going to go, let's see, alphabetic order, Anguilla. So this just maybe 10 to 15 we want to add. So Anguilla, okay. Oops, I want to edit this a little more, right? Where is it? Right, Anguilla, we want to group. Then we see a little group icon come up there, and Anguilla is in there. And I want to just add some more. So Antigua and Barbuda, Aruba, Bahamas, Barbados, right? Cayman Islands, Cuba. It's probably the most painstaking part of this entire tutorial, don't worry. Right? Curacao, Dominica. Dominican Republic. This is just a quick list I took from online, just so I can get it done as quickly as possible. Grenada, right? Haiti, Jamaica. Montserrat. Then we have the saints. So Saint, oh, we have a few. So Saint Kitts. Let's not be discriminatory just because it's taken a while. Let's include all of them. Right? So Saint Lucia, Saint Vincent. Right, so I think we covered that, and then Trinidad and Tobago. Cool. So I'm gonna click OK, and then we have our grouping over there. That is the hardest work, I think, in here. I named it already, so I'm just going to filter to include the grouping that I just made, right? And then I want to put daily vaccinations per million into columns. right? Then I want location in rows. Nice. We get a nice little bar graph there. And then I want to sort it in descending order, which I can do using this here. And then I want to make it a little lively looking. So I'll take location, since these are by location, and drop it into the color shelf here. And we automatically have a nice little key over here. So that's done. Actually, if you want to, if it's a bit hard to read, you don't want to have to hover over it to see it, you can add mark labels by clicking on this little T over here. Nice. Let's call this vaccination leaderboard. Right, for the Caribbean. Nice. So then I want to create another one. What is the daily vaccinations per million by Caribbean country? So I'm just showing different ways we can, there's not like so many fields here. So I'm kind of just showing different ways you can represent same kind of data. So we want to filter Caribbean Isles. Let's filter over here. Nice. So we have, I hope you're not seeing madness going on the screen with flux. So we want to filter it, and then we want to drag location to the text shelf. That will show us all of the locations. I want to drag daily vaccinations per million to the size shelf, actually. It changes the representation drastically. Then I want to do a nice colorful thing by dragging, what is it, vaccines on the color shelf. Yeah, I'm gonna add all. Nice. Nice. And then I'm seeing that it's labeled already, which means that the mark labels are showing. And I think that's it for this one. We showing all the information you need to answer the question. So I'm just going to name it vaccinations by location. Oops. Nice. Last one. Where was this data obtained? We have some nice source information up here. So I'm going to drag vaccines to rows. I'm going to drag source. Where did it go? Right, vaccines to rows. Then I want a source name to rows. And then I want source website to rows. And that's basically all the information I want to show about our sources here by vaccine. And then I don't like this ABC thing here. So I'm gonna show you a little hack that I use just to get rid of it if I don't have anything to drop over here. So you're just going to create a calculated field. You don't really have to name it. So you're going to put in two just single quotes and leave it blank and drag that into text so that it shows up as the blank calculation, right? And you can just adjust the thing over here so that you don't really have to focus on that blank space. So nice. So then we have this, and then I want to do one thing to make this a bit more interactive. I'm going to show you an action. So worksheet actions, this workbook, I'm going to add an action to filter. And what I want to do is the first workbook that we had where I did the daily vaccinations per million by vaccine, I want to be able to click on any vaccine there and filter the source page over here that I'm doing by that vaccine. So I'm just going to only select the daily vaccinations worksheet as a source sheet. And then I want to do a select single select only, which means that when I click on something in the daily vaccinations, that will trigger the action. And the target sheet is the one I'm currently working on that I did not name as yet. So we're going to call that sheet 6 for now. And I want, when I clear the selection or I deselect whatever, it keeps the filtered values, right? And I want to filter all fields. So I click OK. So we have the action added here. I'm going to click OK again, and then we're going to put together the dashboard. Nice. So we're going to call this a vaccinations dashboard. Oh, I didn't name this one. So this is actually sources. And I want to name this vaccinations dashboard. Nice. And then I just want to warn you, when you are creating your dashboard, you want to use the containers provided here so that things are formatted nicely, right? Otherwise, they can end up floating all over the place, literally. So I want to create, let me see. So I already have an idea how I want to format it. So I'm going to drag a virtual here, and then I want to do daily vaccinations, right? So the location filter automatically comes up with it. I want to do a vertical under here to keep them separate. And I want to widen it. You see size here, I can just widen it by clicking the little up arrow here. Right, so I have some more space to work with. I can take the trend that I created, drag it and drop it over here. So the little gray section really tells you where it's going to appear when you drop it. So that's a good guide. So I like my first section here. Okay. And then I want to create another section, and I want to make sure I have some horizontal places to stack them, just like I did with these. So I'm going to use the leaderboard, put it over here. Then I'm going to use the nice little grid that we did here, or like a tree map. And then on the underneath, I'm going to drag another vertical. So you see the gray shaded area there is showing me that kind of horizontal section. So I'm going to drop it so I know it's going under there. And then I want to drag in sources over here, right? This little thing here helps us to fit our worksheets to the dashboard. So I want to fit it to the width, right? And I can just pull this across here to get out longer hair. I can remove this, don't really want this because we're seeing the vaccine names and so on in the view itself, and everything automatically has hover data, all the graphs. So you really don't need to fuss about creating those things like when you are coding, right? So I'm just going to resize a bit to make sure we're seeing everything. Right, and depending on the size, once the words get fit, they will appear, and if not, they just appear blank, but you can always hover to see it, right? And these are color-coded by the vaccines. So this is basically our final dashboard, but I haven't shown you the actions. So what we do is we can play around with maybe a few of the vaccines here, and we click, let's say Johnson & Johnson, and it automatically filters the sources here to just the sources for the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Or actually, it's a lot longer than that. We just can't see it. So it's a list or a combination of different vaccines, right? So we have Johnson & Johnson, Oxford, AstraZeneca, Pfizer, BioNTech, and Sinopharm from Beijing. Nice. So that's it for our dashboard and our mini tutorial. And I'll now go back to the presentation itself to finish off with TabPy. Nice. So what is TabPy? TAPI is an analytics extension implementation, which allows users to execute Python scripts and save functions via Tableau's table calculations. It's an open source project, and the implementation and documentation can be viewed at github.com/tableau/tapi. So I won't go into detail on how this particular view was created. As you can see, it's kind of advanced, but I will go through the calculation used here in this calculated field called groups. Nice. So the goal of this calculation is to help us to group or cluster the origin points of tornadoes. The first thing we see in the calculation is script str. This is one of the 4 Python functions which allows Tableau to know that we're using TAPI. The 4 would be script real, script int, script str, and script bool. Once you've used one of those at the beginning of your calculation, you could go ahead and use any other Tableau aggregations within that function call. So this is the function call here. It ends by this bracket over here. And we can see that they aggregated using AVG, which stands for average. The latter part of all those function names, so str, bool, int, etc., they represent data types, right? So we use the function which retains the data type that we desire. So if we're using script str, it means that we want to provide an output of type string, right? So the parameters can be broken down into 2 main parts. The first part is highlighted in its gray text. It comes up as gray text in your calculated field, and it is pure Python code. It includes all the usual imports and everything, and it's always passed as a string. So you can see it has the double quotation marks there. The second part over here is a list of Tableau fields or parameters. So you see parameters in purple, and the existing fields are in that orange color. They're all disclosed in the square brackets as usual, but it's predictive. So once you start typing the name of the field, it will suggest the field that you want, and you can select it. So it'll format it for you. Right. So they can be used in this function call as well. And once you can visualize it, it becomes easy to follow the entire calculation here. So listen closely to this part, right? The second part of this function call, right? So the non-highlighted area is the parameter listing for the first part, which is the highlighted area, right? So let's go through line by line in this code. So the first 2 lines are just the normal imports. The third line takes a 2-dimensional, or takes 2 one-dimensional numpy arrays, and it creates a 2-dimensional array using column stack. Then we have the fields, the arguments that are used to create these numpy arrays that are used in the function called here. They actually refer to average of slat and average of slon, which refer to the coordinates of latitude and longitude for the origin points of the tornadoes. And they are being referenced in the specific order that they are mentioned in this parameter listing here, right? And that order is very important. So in the 4th line, the DB scan model is created. And we can see here again, they're using arg3 and arg4 they're referencing. That would be the distance between incidents and the number of incidents per quarter. Then the clustering is performed on the features in X, and they're retaining a list of strings, yes or no, depending on this condition here. So wherever the labels are -1 in our output from the model. Right, so then with a little work in Tableau that we wouldn't go through today, you can see the final result here, which is the clusters of origin points of tornadoes. And this will be your output in Tableau right there. As you can see, it's really amazing that you can do this in Tableau. So all it took was, what, about 5 lines of Python code, and you integrate it, and you can see the groups calculated field that we just discussed. It's just dropped in right here in the color shelf and the size shelf, and it created something really amazing. So I only learned about TabPy the other day, and I am excited to continue using it in the future. So that's it for me today. The useful links are mentioned right here at the end of the bibliography. And thank you for your time and attention.